Welcome to the Warrior in Progress podcast. This podcast features honest and vulnerable discussions about how to make lasting mindset shifts. Through these mindset shifts, you'll be able to commit to yourself and stop sabotaging yourself so you can transform your life. I'm your host, Jennifer McKee, certified health coach and motivational speaker. Look, I've been there. I've done that. I've lost over 50% of my body weight naturally. That's 185 pounds. I invite you to subscribe to the Warrior in Progress podcast for motivational, inspirational, and thought-provoking topics where I'll share with you some practical tools that I've learned on my journey so far that will empower you and help you to access that inner warrior that's inside each and every one of us. Are you ready to get started? Let's go. Hi, welcome to the Warrior in Progress podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer McKee, and I am so excited for our episode today. I have the honor to interview someone who has made a major impact on my transformation journey, Kute Blackson. And I found Kute randomly online in the first few weeks after I decided to commit to myself, and his teachings just really helped shift my perspective on the world around me so that I could actually transform my life. And I'm so grateful to have participated in the Man Breakthrough experience, as well as to have private coaching from Kute about 5 years ago. And I really learned so much from Kute, but I would say the top things were managing my inner critic, taking my power back, learning how to forgive myself and others. And also, I think the other thing that I always teach, so if you guys have listened to my podcast, you know, I talk about this a lot, but to look at life as a university. You know, everything is there for you to learn from as an opportunity to learn. One of my favorite quotes is, life is not happening to you, life is happening, for you. So I didn't have to play a victim anymore. And Kute was so instrumental in helping me shift my perspective on this. So just to give you a little bit of quick background about Kute, and then I'm going to ask him to share about himself. He's a transformational and spiritual teacher, leader, coach, inspirational speaker. And not only that, he's a national best-selling author of You Are the One. And he has a new book coming out called The Magic of Surrender, Finding the Courage to Let Go, which comes out this Tuesday, May 4th. And I'm so excited for that book to come out. And we will be talking about that book during this podcast. The other thing I want to mention is that Kute has one of my favorite podcasts called Soul Talk. So, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later as well. So welcome, Kute. I am just thrilled to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
It's great to be here. Really proud of everything you have accomplished in the last 5 years.
Thank you so much, Kute. So let's get started. And for those of you of the viewers who don't, or I should say listeners who don't know you, could you just give a little bit of background about yourself and your experiences that led you to become this transformational leader who you are today?
Yeah. Just in a nutshell, I was born in Ghana, West Africa. My father's from Ghana. My mother's Japanese. I grew up in London. From a very young age, I was a very sensitive kid. And so I always felt a deep, shall we say, calling to help people in some way. I would feel people suffering in a very intense way as a child, being very sensitive. And there was a part of me that was so empathic that I wanted to alleviate people's suffering. I didn't know what that would look like, but this was just a feeling inside of me. And so as a young boy, I really started to ask myself the questions of the sense of, I would see people suffering, and I see people who seemed to have every reason to be happy. They had money, they had success, and they were miserable. I grew up around a lot of folks that didn't have a lot, and I didn't have a lot growing up. And so yet I knew so many people who didn't seem to have very much, but seemed to be so happy, and fulfilled. And so it was confusing for me. And so I started to really ask myself the questions as a young boy, what's the purpose of life? What is this thing about? Is it just to go to work, make money, have a big house, buy a car, make babies, go on vacation, and then die? There has to be more to this purpose, this life thing, than just that. And so that began a quest for me at a very young age. also, one of my first memories as a young boy was literally seeing a crippled woman crawling on the floor. She picks up the sand that this man walks on, wipes it on her face, and stands up. And so week after week, I grew up seeing this man who essentially picked up, look at a woman in a wheelchair and say, "Why are you in this wheelchair? Stand up." I grew up seeing the same man look at someone who couldn't see, and he would put his hands on their eyes, and the sight was restored. And so this man was my father. He built 300 churches in Ghana, West Africa. He built a huge church in London, about 4,000 or 5,000 people, hundreds of thousands of followers in Africa at his height. And this is how I grew up, around these miracles. I didn't think anything was that different about it. I didn't think anything was strange. It was just normal for me. And this was my upbringing. I grew up with a sense of possibilities, a sense of connection to something bigger than myself. Call it God, call it consciousness, call it infinite intelligence, whatever label. I don't really care. But this was the foundation for my life. I grew up feeling like there were no limits. And that was a huge gift of, I think, my childhood. So when I was age 8, I started to speak in front of my father's churches. When I was 14, I was ordained as a minister and designated to be the successor, to take over my father's churches. And that was my trajectory. You know, at 14, my entire life was carved out for me. My entire life was set. My father had decided, everyone was on board. Everyone had all these expectations. And the funny thing is, I knew at a very young age that that was not my path. I knew that this was not my destiny, that this wasn't the way that I felt called for my soul to evolve, for my soul to express in this lifetime. And the truth is, I was too afraid to speak the truth to my father. My fear was, if I really dare to be myself, if I really speak the truth, then I'll be outcast. If I really speak the truth, then I'll lose his love, I'll lose the relationship, I'm going to be alone, I'll be abandoned, I'll be unloved, everyone will sort of abandon me from the community. And so I went along with it, you know, and for 4 years, from 14 to 18, there was a lot of inner turmoil, depression, sadness, confusion, because something wasn't quite aligned inside. And I think one of the reasons that we, as human beings, we're not happy, or we feel blocked, or we feel stuck, because in so many ways, we're not telling the truth to ourselves. In so many ways, we're not really being honest with who we are, what we really feel, what we want, where we're going. And we lie to ourselves, you know, we don't tell the truth to ourselves. And so as I felt into my future, when I was 18, I had to make a decision. And so from this time, from 8 to 18, I was speaking in my father's churches. From 8 to 18, I was reading, you know, hundreds of books in the fields of self-help, psychology, and this became my university. This became my school. This became my education. And everyone from, let's say, the Western folks, Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, Marianne Williamson, Deepak Chopra, Louise Hay, and on, to the Eastern mystics, Krishnamurti, Osho, Ramana Maharishi, Yogananda. I just devoured these books. And when I turned 18, I had to make some decisions. I looked into my future and I realized I had two paths. And life is a series of decisions that we make, you know, and one decision can change the trajectory of our destiny and our lives forever. And I looked into the path that was expected of me, that everyone expected, carved out by my father, and it was painful. I realized I could be successful by everyone else's standards. I could be successful by the world standards. But if I don't have myself, if I don't have my own soul, if I don't have my own integrity, if I don't have my own self-respect, if I'm not following my truth, it was basically a soul suicide is what I felt. And I really feel that we can't truly be fulfilled living someone else's life. We can't truly be fulfilled living someone else's idea, being someone that we're not. And when I looked in this path, age 20, age 30, age 40, age 50, age 60, age 70, I just knew it wasn't right. You know, it was scary. It's sometimes really scary to acknowledge the truth. Maybe someone listening in, you're in a relationship and you know this relationship isn't right. You know, and you know it's not aligned, or you're not in love anymore. Maybe someone listening in, you're working a job that you know this is not the real reason as to why you were put on this planet, but you're doing this job because it pays the bills, or maybe you become successful. But deep inside, you have a deeper knowing that something is not truly aligned for you anymore. But it can be really scary to let go of what we know, to let go of success, to let go of what's comfortable, to let go of who we were and what we've been and the life we thought we should be living, to really follow our souls and our hearts. And so I looked down another path. The path that was calling me was I wanted to come to America. All of the teachers and authors I read about as a kid, they lived in the US, they lived in California, they lived in Southern California. And I thought, this is the Mecca for self-help and spirituality. And so it was going to be India or Los Angeles or San Diego. And cut a long story short, I looked at this path. It was completely unknown. I didn't know how, I didn't know what, I didn't know when. All I knew was there was a path calling me and it felt aligned. There was a path calling me and it felt like this is the path that my soul was guiding me down. And it was terrifying. And so I mustered up the courage to have the conversation with my father, told him I wasn't taking over his churches. It was scary. It was terrifying. Sometimes people think, oh, when you follow your purpose, when you follow your truth, it's like the universe, everything flows. And not that it wouldn't flow, but sometimes when you own your truth and you go down the path of your purpose, that's when sometimes the challenges begin. And those challenges sometimes make people think that they're following the wrong path, and then they get afraid and then they go back to what they know. But I believe sometimes those challenges are a sign that you're following the right path, because they are challenges, I call them soul tests, that you go through, that you have to go through, because they are soul tests that are sent, that we attract for us to develop the necessary mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, shall we say, muscle, so that we can become the person who is capable of fulfilling the vision and dream that we see in our minds. Nelson Mandela, he had to spend 27 years in prison. That's called an intense soul test. 27 years in prison. I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
Yeah.
But what if he didn't go to prison? Would he be who he is today? Likely not. And so I had the conversation with my father. We didn't speak for 2 years. Long story short, I won a green card in the green card lottery, came to the US, 2 suitcases, $1,000, no one in the country. And that really began my journey in America of following the dream that I felt as a child. And it's been an amazing journey, ever since. It wasn't an easy journey, but I'm really glad that for me, the shift began happening when I was committed and surrendered to tell myself the truth. To tell myself the truth. And I think if everyone's wondering, where do I start? Where do I begin? Really look at what lies you're telling yourself. What are you pretending to not know? Like, what lies am I telling myself? What am I pretending to not know? And what is it costing me? And be willing to feel the cost, feel the pain of what it costs you to be living not truly aligned with your heart, with your internal integrity. We often tend to distract ourselves from the pain. We feel like, oh, something's painful and that's wrong, that's bad. And so we distract ourselves. We eat it away, we sex it away, we social media it away, we shop it away, we work it away. Whatever the distraction is, we drug it away, we smoke it away, so that we don't have to feel the pain. But what we have to realize is the pain is also a teacher. The pain is also a signal. The pain is actually a messenger and your friend. So if you're willing to, like, how people know, how we know that we're lying is we're going to feel some pain inside of our heart, some pain in our life. That pain is a messenger that you're off. That pain is a messenger that you're not listening. That pain is a messenger that you're going down a path and you're not truly aligned. And so I think if we can embrace the pain, not numb the pain, receive the message, which is the gift of the pain, and use that pain to realign and reconnect with a deeper truth in our heart, that's, I think, when we can begin making a shift. And, we just sometimes rationalize, and I call play a game of confusion, or like the sense of, I'm not sure, I'm confused, I don't know. And deep down, we know the truth. We know what's aligned. We know if a relationship's right. We know if it's not. We know. And I think the more we're able to trust that knowing and have the courage to own our truth and live that, even though it's scary, the more we can begin to shift our life. And so that's kind of how my journey began. And then over the years, I started coaching people, and one person led to 2 people, led to 3 people, led to 4, and it just kept expanding. And, you know, you've been to my seminar and events as well.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Kute. And I really love what you said. And it kind of made me think about the inner critic too, because the inner critic is something I hear from my clients all the time. You know, they're beating themselves up. They have these limiting beliefs. They're keeping themselves stuck. They're choosing to believe their thoughts. And I love, like, and you are the one. I'm actually going to read a quote here from your book, because I just think that this is just spot on. It says, in your book, You Are the One, it says, the source of the problem is the importance you give to the thought. It's your belief in the thought. And I think, you know, when the inner critic comes out and it tells us I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough, I can't reach my goals, or whatever it's telling you that's negative, we can buy into the thought, right? We can give our power to the thought, and that can keep us stuck in this like vicious cycle. So that's one of the biggest things I hear from the people who listen to my podcast, and also the people that I coach. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about that. It's like, okay, I know the truth deep down, you know, I know what I need to do, but I have this inner critic that is reinforcing all of these limiting beliefs that's keeping me stuck. So what's your suggestion there about how to start managing that?
Yeah, to me, we make the inner critic the issue. Like, it's the issue. We've got to defeat it. We've got to overcome it. We make it wrong. We judge it. We fight it. We beat it up, right? The inner critic, this damn inner critic, got to like get rid of the inner critic. And I'm saying the inner critic is actually, and I really want people to hear this, the inner critic is not the issue. It's not the issue. If you make the inner critic the issue, you'll never break out, or it will be very difficult to break out of the loop of the inner critic. The fight with the inner critic will likely continue for a very long time. You're fighting the inner critic, judging the inner critic will just reinforce it, and it will only perpetuate the dynamic of the inner critic. So realize the inner critic is not the issue. Your relationship with the inner critic is more the issue than the inner critic itself. If you understand that the issue is not the issue, your relationship with the issue is more the issue than what you're making the issue, a whole different kind of freedom begins to emerge, which shifts your ability to deal with the inner critic. When you're judging and fighting and beating, and maybe you read a book, get rid of the inner critic. No, transcend the inner critic. You're like, I shouldn't have this inner critic. You get into an internal fight with the inner critic. Before, you just had the inner critic. Now you have like a war with the inner critic. And let me tell you, likely you're not going to win.
Yeah, probably not.
You're not going to win. And so when you realize, when you make that shift, the issue is not the inner critic, it's my relationship with the inner critic, then there's a freedom, then you're able to step back. You see, the inner critic, typically, for the most part, is an aspect of ourselves that was created or came into being through a process of conditioning, from childhood in response or in reaction to some event, to some experience, to our parents, to something. The inner critic is a conditioned aspect of ourself that was likely a reaction to things that happened as a way, developed as a way to get love or avoid pain. Because we think, so underlying the inner critic and underlying every behavior is a positive intention. So even the inner critic has a beautiful positive intention. The way I see it, and I'm going to break down why, the inner critic is beautiful. The inner critic is so sweet. The inner critic is just amazing. It's just a little misguided. And when we really understand, wow, it's so beautiful. It's trying to do something for us that's so beautiful. It's just going about it the wrong way. It's like you're just trying to, drive to Los Angeles, but you end up, walking or crawling from New York. Crawling there is going to be painful, but you're still trying, right? And so the inner critic is a conditioned reaction to avoiding pain or trying to get love and validation, because that inner critic is trying to get us something. So we have to understand, if it has a positive intention, it means well. It's just misguided in some way. See, I just want to step back and then come back to the inner critic.
Okay.
Just so people understand kind of the conditioning that I'm talking about. As children, we're born free. As children, we're these bright beings. We're born, we come down to this planet. We're in touch with light. A little baby's not thinking, am I fat? What's wrong with me? I can't do this. It will jump on the table. It doesn't care. It's not wondering. It's not going boo boo gaga. Oh, that didn't sound like Celine Dion. That didn't sound like Adele or Barbara Streisand.
Right.
It's just like goo goo gaga. It doesn't care. It doesn't have an inner critic judging itself. It just is rolling around, crawling. The baby's not like crawling around going, what's wrong with you? That was a terrible crawl. That's not as good as crawl as all the other babies on the street. It's just, falls down, stands up, poops its pants. It's not saying, what's wrong with you? You pooped your pants yesterday. You should know better than it. It's just being whatever it's being. So it doesn't have that condition in a critic when we're little babies. And that's why babies are happy. They're free. They're spontaneous. You look into a little baby's eyes. We are reminded when we look into a baby's eyes of the profound, beautiful innocence of our own being. It reminds us of that unconditioned essence. So what happens, and how does the conditioning and the inner critic start? What happens is we're born, we meet our parents. Our parents, they're just, some of them are crazy, some of them are interesting, some are unique. They're just doing the best that they can do based on their programming, based on their past, based on their conditioning, based on their lives, based on, their parents, and they're just doing the best that they can do. They typically did not have an intention to say, well, how can I screw my kids up? What are all the ways I can mess my kids up and really, really get them hating themselves, judging themselves? No, they're just doing whatever they knew how to do. And so we're born into an environment, a structure and a framework. All of us are born into some level of, shall we say, this dysfunction in some way as human beings. Maybe we were born into an abusive household, mentally, emotionally, sexually. Maybe there was alcoholism. Maybe there was drugs. Maybe there was judgmentalness. Maybe there was abandonment. Maybe a parent left. Maybe they weren't around. Maybe they were fighting all the time. Maybe everything was fine, but maybe they just weren't emotionally, shall we say, present. And we felt the pain of that. And it may not have been so conscious to us, but we felt it. And certain needs weren't met that we would love to have had met growing up as a child. Okay. So we're born into this environment. And two things happen. The first thing is we learn to shut down, disconnect, and not feel. That's the first thing. Shut down, disconnect, not feel the pain of our environment so that we can function, survive, and cope. And so all of those feelings that we shut down, suppress, and don't feel don't really go anywhere. They just get stuck, stored in our body, stored in our tissues, stored in our nervous system, and they get stuck inside of us, and layer after layer after layer starts building up. Then we learn a way of being in the world where we go into the world and we start learning based on our relationship with our parents. Oh, who do I need to be in order to get love? Who do I need to be in order to fit in? Who do I need to be in order to get love, validation, and acceptance? Oh, when you're loud, dad says, shut up, be quiet. When a boy cries, boys don't cry, that's for girls. So we learn to disconnect, and we learn to be tough, to be independent, to be whatever we think we need to be. We start developing all sorts of roles and masks and personas that we create in order to get love, validation, acceptance, connection. And we contort ourselves into a kind of shape to become who we think we need to be. And we hold very tightly onto that identity. And we think that is who we are. So my question, before I jump back into the inner critic, is the version of ourselves that we become is not really who we are. But we're not aware. It's just a conditioned version of who we think we are based on our programming and our desire to avoid pain and get love and validation. So we're wearing these masks, these roles, these personas. And so as a result, perhaps not feeling unconditional love growing up, we've learned to be something that we're not in order to get unconditional love from the world. And so the inner critic is an aspect of us that also comes into being as a way to, what's wrong with you? Do more. What's wrong? You're bad. Because on some level, we think that if we beat ourselves up, we've been conditioned to think if we beat ourselves up, if we judge ourselves, the intention is typically to be better. The intention is typically to do more. The intention is typically to what? To improve. The intention is to typically like be more perfect. Why do we want to be more perfect? Why do we want to be more beautiful? Why do we want to be get better grades? Ultimately, because if I can get the grades, if I can be more beautiful, if I can be more XYZ, fill in the blank, then what? Then I'm going to get more love, validation, approval. So that inner critic has learned or thinks that if I can beat myself, whip myself, push myself, torture myself, judge myself to be better, then I will be more perfect and I'll be more lovable. So we have to see that the motivation of the inner critic is essentially to get love, to be accepted. It has a positive intention. It's just that the way we're going about it is limited. And so when we can realize, when we can step back out of the inner critic and realize, I am not the inner critic. Because for a moment, we actually think we're the inner critic. So when the voices start going off in our minds, we think that those voices, I'm not enough, you're not this, you're not pretty enough, not good enough, we think that those voices are true. We tend to think those voices are fact. We tend to think those voices are reality. And we tend to think, this is me. And I'm saying the inner critic isn't you. The inner critic is a created, conditioned version, that an aspect that we consciously or unconsciously manufactured in response to trying to get love and validation. But it's a misguided methodology, misguided way to get the love, the validation, and acceptance. Are you with me so far? And so when we are aware that the voice of I'm not the inner critic, the thoughts that the inner critic is thinking, just because there's a thought in my mind, criticizing doesn't mean it's true. Then we can start taking a step back and having a different relationship with the inner critic. And then when we can also realize there's a positive intention, then we can have some space and maybe some empathy for the inner critic aspect of ourselves, because we start seeing that it means well. It's trying. And when we realize that, then we're no longer at war with the inner critic. When we're not at war with the inner critic, we can hold the inner critic, move into a bit more of a spacious relationship with the inner critic. Then we can seek to understand it and maybe bring compassion and love to it and start relating to it as we start realizing, whoa. Okay, I see what it's doing. It's like a little child. I see what it's doing. Okay, inner critic. What I had to learn, many years ago, was to work with my inner critic. And so when my inner critic was, you're not doing that good enough, and rather than going, oh yeah, it's true, it's like, oh, no. Just because a thought is in my mind doesn't mean it's true. It's not so much the thoughts that are important, but it's the power I give them. And if I'm not the inner critic, but the inner critic is trying to motivate me, the inner critic is trying to drive me, the inner critic is trying to get me to be more excellent. So I had to learn to speak to my inner critic and say, okay, thank you, thank you, inner critic. Thank you, little Kute, who was 8 years old and thought that he needed to be perfect in order to be loved. I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to push me to be perfect, because if I'm perfect, then people will love me as a child. So thank you, inner critic. You don't have to do that now. I'm here. I'm aware. I understand what you're trying to get. And then bringing the loving, the compassion, or whatever it is that you were seeking, or that the inner critic is trying to get you, bringing that to yourself in that moment is part of where the healing happens. Healing is the application of loving, compassion, empathy. Healing is the application of loving and empathy to those parts of ourselves that are hurting. And as we're able to meet that inner critic aspect of us with love, with compassion, with kindness, that is where the real healing happens. Not with judgment, not with force, not with mentalization, but hold the inner critic with love. That's where true emotional healing can happen, and the inner critic can melt, be transformed in the space of love, and we begin to relate to ourselves with much more kindness and empathy. Doesn't mean the inner critic will disappear completely. It might be there, but it might soften. Doesn't mean the inner critic will totally be gone, but we don't take it as seriously. It pops up and we go, oh, okay, thanks, I see. Okay, I just need a bit of more acceptance right now. And so that is the way of beginning to work with the inner critic.
Thanks so much, Kute. I love what you say. And yeah, I don't think the inner critic is going anywhere, but for me, I feel like it's softened a little bit, but it's still there. But almost what you're saying is kind of to just observe it, observe what it's telling you, and give it love, give it compassion. And I just really loved what you said. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Just to say one more point.
Sure.
Is yes, observe it, be present with it, watch it, and ask yourself, what the inner critic is saying, is it true?
Yeah.
Is it fact? Is it true? Is it fact? Is it reality? Is it real? Is it big? Yes, it's true that I am worthless and not enough. Okay, let's go with that for a second. It's true. I'm unworthy. Why? Because I have proof. I said, what's the proof? Because my mother left when I was 8. She abandoned me. Let's just go with this story. She abandoned me and left me with my father. And that was because I was unlovable. Is it true that you're unlovable? Yes, it's true that I'm unlovable. Because if I was lovable, she wouldn't have left. Is it true that you're unlovable? See, we don't question the mind. We don't question the inner critic. Is it true that you're unlovable? Yes, it's true. Is it really true? If you really investigate without judgment, is it fact that you're unlovable? I mean, it's fact that you're a woman, right? It's fact that you have this amazing color hair. Right now.
Thank you.
I might have to try that hair color at some point. But this is fact. It's not a judgment. It's the certain reality. So is it fact that you're unlovable? Unlovable is a judgment. Unlovable is an inner critic. Unlovable is a perception. Unlovable is a projection. Is it fact? Well, she wouldn't have left if I was lovable. So I would ask someone, for instance, so you see, we as children, events happen. We can't argue that maybe events happen, right? Mother left, someone did this, someone didn't do that. Right. But what we do as children is we see the event, and in our limited understanding, we interpret that event and we start making meanings about that event in order to try and make sense of reality in that moment. But because we're young, we're not necessarily able to understand and make true sense of a particular event in a moment. And so many times the meanings we make, Mom left, I'm unworthy and unlovable. It's not reality. It's the only thing that we were able to discern and make meaning of in that moment. Right. And so I ask a person who might have a judgment like that. Could Mom leaving mean anything else? Could it have meant anything else? No. Really say, like, could it have meant anything else? Because if we really investigate, sometimes we get so attached to what our inner critic tells us. Sometimes we get so attached to the judgments and we get almost attached because at least we know, oh, if I'm not enough, then this is what life looks like. If I'm not enough, this is what life means. If I'm not enough and I'm not lovable, then I kind of know what my relationships are going to be like. If I feel I'm unlovable, then I won't have, I'll only have a certain realm of relationship. But to let go and surrender the stories and identities that we've made up about ourselves that we get so attached to, that can be kind of scary. And so could it mean anything else? Because the reality is it could mean that Mom knew that she was incapable and capable of loving and raising you. And so she left to kind of give you a better life. It could mean that she was so messed up that she just wasn't able to even think and fathom. That had nothing to do with you in this example, right? So it could mean so many things. So it's important that we question the meanings and the stories that we have told ourselves and the interpretations based on certain events, so that if we question that can shift things as well, you know, because our inner critic is often created in reaction and response to certain events to avoid pain and get love. So it's important that we really observe and question our mind, our thoughts, and question the inner critic with love. Is it true? Is it fact? Is it real? Could it mean something else? Could it be something else?
Yeah, I love you. So you just made me think of this. It seems like a lot of us will base our worth on everything outside of ourselves, right? Like on people, like what they say to us, what they do, what they don't do, or things or situations. Like that was a situation, you know, a mother leaving. So it's kind of interesting to, you know, that we base our self-worth on those things that are totally out of our control and outside of ourselves, when really, as human beings, we inherently have worth. You know what I mean? So it's, I don't know if you have anything to say about that. I just thought about that. Like, that's kind of interesting that we do that a lot. I see that a lot with myself and with the people that I coach. So I'm wondering, like, have you noticed that? And what's your response to basing your worth on things outside of yourself?
Yeah, I think on some level, connected to what I was talking about around conditioning, you know, we grew up not necessarily being unconditionally loved from the standpoint of maybe as a child you got a B plus and mom said, why did you not get an A? And so we interpreted that of, oh, I'd be more lovable if I got an A. Oh, why do you not this? Why not that? Why this? Why? And so we started to equate, oh, I'm not necessarily lovable as I am, but if I am more nice, more kind, more good, more perfect, more beautiful, more, shall we say, engaging, more charming, more intelligent, if I get better grades. Love became, we got conditioned from a very young age to feel that love is something you have to earn by doing X, Y, Z. By getting good grades, good boy. Okay, now look, you know, look at Kute, he's a good boy. Look at so and so. Look at Susie, she's a good girl because she's so this, she's so that, she does this, and so we start taking that in. So love becomes something that you need to earn, do something to get and earn in order to. You need to do something in order to get, and so that's kind of the conditioning that we developed from a very young age. We were conditioned to believe that love is something you have to do. You have to do some things to get love, rather than realizing inherently we are love. We have forgotten that what we are in our true nature is love. When we realize that, when we surrender to that, when we awaken to that, you know, through, let's say, unconditioning ourselves from the stories and the wounds and the pain and the feelings, all that stuff, the real work, peeling away the layers that kind of prevents our own ability to be in touch with the essence of what we are, because we're conditioned. When we start unraveling those layers, we begin to get in touch with, oh, I am love. I'm love itself, you know, and that's the freedom. I think when we can get in touch with and remember that what we are is love, there's a profound freedom that births awakened inside of us, because we start to see that, oh, I don't have to like do all these things in order to get love. I am love. Now, obviously, it's nice when we receive love, but I'm inherently worthy just because I am, and that's it. That's it. I'm worthy because I am. And even, look, I'll be honest, you know, maybe I'll rub a few people the wrong way, but I think it's worth a conversation. I think also in religion, certain religion, there's a similar dynamic that gets perpetuated, you know. Oh, if you're good, if you pray, if you come to church, if you do these things, then God's gonna love you.
Yeah.
And God's gonna love you if you are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so it's like, oh, shoot, I gotta be all these things in order to get God's love, which, you know, I think is another way that religion, not every churches, not every can manipulate and control people to conform in a certain way. Because if you tell people, God loves you no matter what, you are loved unconditionally, you are worthy, you are just loved no matter what, you don't even have to come to church. I mean, I'm going to exaggerate. to church. Why would you go to church? Would you, all these things. And so I think certain religion has perpetuated the conditionality as well. And so I think when we really tap into who we are, what we are, which for me is direct connection to source, to spirituality, you realize that I'm a spark of the infinite. You're a spark of the divine. We are a spark of the divine. We are a manifestation and creation of the infinite consciousness expressing itself as me, as you. And if that's what we are, and we are an expression of that, how can the real us, how can we not be worthy when we are that essence itself?
Yeah, I love what you say too about, life being like a university, and we're on a journey and we're here to learn certain lessons. And also that sometimes we repeat the same. I'm like you, I learned this from you though, but like, I don't like to say mistakes. I like to call them learning opportunities, but we repeat the same mistakes until we learn the lesson. And I learned that from you, and that really spoke to me. And it's something that I think about all of the time because I see that in my life. And so how does one go about shifting their perspective? If somebody's feeling like life is happening to them, like nothing ever goes right, this is happening, that's happening, and they're feeling like a victim, how can they go about shifting their mindset into looking for, opportunities for growth and learning?
Look, I think just first realize, let's just take it spiritually and come back to the practical.
Okay.
I think first we have to realize that the purpose of life is growth and evolution. That's it. We forget, we think it's about vacation, nothing wrong. We think about vacations, about cookies, about TV, about Netflix, about, all these great things. But the bottom line, we incarnate into this human experience to grow and evolve. That's the bottom line. The purpose of this incarnation is to grow and evolve. We are souls that incarnated into these, spacesuits, into this body, into your body, into our individual body, with our unique dynamics, because there were certain lessons that we needed to learn, to experience, to evolve, to grow through. And that's where we incarnated. And so, in a sense, every single situation, every single relationship, every single experience is the classroom for our soul's growth and evolution. In every relationship situation is some opportunity to learn, to evolve, to grow, and move through the lessons. When we understand that, then we shift our perspective from I'm a victim or success or failure, and you start realizing that the real success in life is not simply, shall we say, achieving the goal or not achieving the goal. The real success in life is the degree to which you learn the lesson where you are with who you're with and grow from that, because you can achieve the goal and make the money, but if you don't grow and you're still living out of integrity, you're a jerk, you're miserable, you're unhappy, etc., then I'm going to propose that that's not real success and you haven't really learned. And so when you really understand the deeper purpose of life, what this process is, we're here to grow and evolve. It's like remembering what's the purpose of school. Imagine you go to high school and you just get so distracted with video games. The purpose of going to school or university is not to sit there and play video games, right? It's to learn the lesson, not to sit there and eat video games and watch television. But we get distracted with watching TV, with all sorts of, entertainment, with this or that, and we forget, like, oh, I'm supposed to be in this relationship, in this situation, even if it was difficult, even in this accident, even in this where I was betrayed. Maybe there's something for me to learn here, that the fact that this person betrayed me. And so because we forget that, we start only experiencing life from a one-dimensional perspective. He did this and she did that. Jennifer did this and she did it and she's a bad person. And we forget, whoa. If we stay stuck on the level of the story, even if we're right, we won't go and evolve. We will feel like a victim. They did that to me, and she betrayed me, and they were that to me. Maybe we're right, and maybe it's true, but we won't be free, and we won't evolve. So we have to ask ourselves, do I want to be free or not? Do I want to be free or right? Do I want to be free and evolve, or do I want to be right and stuck? When we understand that, oh, the whole point of this experience is growth and evolution, then rather than staying stuck on, she did this and they did that, and I'm a victim, two things. Number one, on a spiritual level, you realize that you're not really a victim, because if life is about growth, then the fact that you're going through that experience is reflecting, and it doesn't make and condone what other people do, just to be clear. We can talk about that in a second. It doesn't make it okay what people don't do. They abused you, it doesn't make it okay. But if we understand the nature and the purpose of life, then we're able to see life from a soul perspective, a soul lens, not just a personality lens. Then as we go through a situation, we understand there's a lesson here. As we go through a situation, we have an understanding that if I'm going through this situation with this person, in this moment, in this experience, with these parents, my soul must be ready for it. My soul, on some level, signed up for this classroom. Our personality might be thinking, hell no, but we wouldn't be in it and going through it if on some level our soul didn't want the necessary evolutionary growth gift. When we stay stuck in victimhood, it's happening to me, it's happening to me, it's happening, I'm a victim, then we're not able to tap into a part of ourselves, learn what we need to learn so that we can unwrap and uncover the wrapping, the gift wrapping of the lesson. The lessons in life tend to come wrapped in very nice wrapping paper that we have to unwrap so we can access the gift. When we access the gift, we grow and evolve. When we access the gift, which is the lesson, then we tap into a deeper part of ourselves and we become more. When we access the gift, we learn the lesson. And when we learn the lesson, that's when we transcend the situation. When we stay stuck, and then we attract different relationships, different situations. When we stay stuck in victimhood, woe is me, God doesn't love me, it's happening to me, then we don't learn the lesson, and we just keep recreating the same cycle over and over and over and over and over again. So on the bigger spiritual level, there are no victims. There are no victims. We signed up for this experience. That doesn't mean you shouldn't take that person to court. That doesn't mean you shouldn't, report that person. That doesn't mean you don't protest. That doesn't mean we don't change the system. But it allows you to engage in the experience from a different relationship, not caught up in your ego personality, but from a more expanded perspective, an expanded relationship that then allows you to deal with it differently. So when you realize there's no victims, my soul signed up for this experience, then that frees you up to say, okay, instead of focusing on what she did and she didn't do, let me ask myself in any given situation, what is my soul seeking to learn? What is the evolutionary gift and opportunity? What is the lesson? How did I attract this? What does my soul want? What does I need to resolve within myself right here? Because if we unravel that Rubik's Cube and unravel that lesson, that's when we transcend. That's when we transcend. In terms of victim, sometimes things happen to us. They did happen. They happen. But just because they happen, that doesn't mean you're a victim. Just because XYZ happened, that doesn't mean you have to stay stuck either in victimness for the rest of your life. It happened, needs to be dealt with. It happened, we need to acknowledge it. It happened, then maybe we need to grieve it and process it and feel it and honor it and experience what we need to experience. But just know that that thing happening does not have to ultimately define you. Victimness is an identity that we sometimes hold onto, that the ego holds onto as an identity. What I want you to understand, and everyone listening, is you are not a victim. Victim is an identity of how we label ourselves. But just like I'm saying is, you are not that label. You are not a victim. You are infinite. You are divine. You are a manifestation of the divine. But when we hold it, I'm a victim, the ego sometimes loves to hold on to the identity of a victim. And one of the ways we do that is we're constantly telling the story about what happened and what didn't happen as a way to reinforce our identity, as a way to reinforce ourselves, as a way to connect with people. And I'm not saying we shouldn't speak about it. I'm not saying we shouldn't communicate. I'm definitely not saying we shouldn't deal with it. We should deal with it and move through it. But when victimness becomes an identity, and then we go through life as a victim, because now it's become an identity, like who I am.
Right.
Then we are now disconnected from our power. Then we're not able to learn, grow, and evolve. Then we don't have the power in that moment to truly shift and change our reality. And so I'm just saying, and sometimes we get addicted to being the victim because of what it brings us. Maybe people feel sorry for us. Maybe people feel connected to us. Maybe that's how we feel weak and like, oh, let me take care of you. And so we have to be aware of, is there some payoff by staying stuck in the victim? Maybe by being the victim, we don't have to step into our power. Maybe by being the victim, we don't have to step into our power and truly be free and fully express our gifts, because I'm a victim, you know, I'm a victim, so I can't do it. And so it can become the ego's way of avoiding truly taking responsibility for yourself and your life and shining your light. Sometimes being a victim, I had a client many years ago. I talk about this in You Are the One. She had a victim pattern, and she felt that her parents weren't there, and her parents didn't do this, the parents didn't do that, parents weren't present, parents, all these things. And that's why she was messed up and not successful in making money, because of what my parents did. And she couldn't give it up. She couldn't. And so on some level, that she had an unconscious desire to prove to her parents that she was right. And the way she did that, so she couldn't really afford to give up being a victim and being free and being happy and being successful, because what would that mean, right? What would that mean? Because if I want to really show my parents how much you screwed me up, so look how messed up my life is right now, and it's because of you, giving up being a victim is going to kind of bust that whole situation. And so we have to realize we have to be more committed to being free. There's nothing as powerful as being free. So you're not a victim. No matter what has happened to you, you can learn, you can grow, you can evolve, you can expand, you can learn the lesson, and you can fulfill your potential. It's only when we give up being the victim that we're able to step truly into our power. So we have to be willing to take responsibility for what we can learn, how we can grow, how we can evolve. You know, one of the things I had to give up when I first came to the US, my early 20s, was, I remember being pissed off at my dad because I felt like my dad wasn't there, my dad wasn't around, he abandoned me, you know, he didn't support me, when I told him my father I wasn't taking over, we didn't speak for 2 years, all this stuff. And I came to the US, no support, we didn't speak. I was basically eating bread for a week at a time, you know, scrounging, literally stealing and scrounging food in the supermarket in Koreatown, Los Angeles, because I had no money. And I remember being in my apartment feeling like, woe is me, and God doesn't love me, and my dad doesn't love me, and, you know, all of these things. And if why can't I be like, you know, this person who has the support of his parents, support of his father? And I just felt so alone, you know, when you feel so alone. And I kid you not, I was praying and meditating one day. Must have been 20 years old. Here's where a moment in my life changed. I don't even know what led up to it because it was such a while ago, but there was a moment where something clicked, and it's almost as though the universe said, no one owes you anything. God doesn't owe you anything. Your father doesn't owe you anything now. No one owes you anything. If anything, God, the universe, God has given you everything already. You've already been given everything. It's what you do now with what you have. that's going to make the difference. And so something shifted when I gave up. I didn't even know I had it, but when I gave up a frequency of subtle, we'll call it entitlement, you know? Like my dad owes me an apology. Sometimes we remain victims when we're waiting for someone else to apologize to us. Like, my dad should apologize to me. Yeah, he should. And I'm not going to, you know, move until they apologize. And now we're waiting for them to apologize so we can be free. And that's when I realized nothing is worth my freedom. Nothing is worth your freedom, even if you're right. And that's when you forgive, you release, you learn your lessons, you set yourself free, and you empower yourself. You take your power back, and you say, you realize, I'm not a victim. In every moment, I have the choice right now to choose my reality. I have the choice right now to choose what I'm going to believe about myself, about life, and take actions. And that's, I think, where we have to start, the willingness to take responsibility for how we feel. No one has the power over you to control or determine how you feel unless you give it to them. That's the beginning of transformation.
Love it, Kute. Gosh, this is so great. Thank you so much. I want to talk about your new book. So it's called The Magic of Surrender. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that and what inspired you to write on this particular topic?
Yeah, the magic of surrender. You know, surrender is a topic that I think has been misunderstood for many years. You know, we have this idea of surrender, like you got to be a monk in the Himalayas. You know, you got to just like sit there like a, you know, like a nun or something and wear robes. And, oh, if I surrender, then I won't get what I want. If I surrender, I'm going to be homeless. If I surrender, I'm going to be unsuccessful. If I surrender, then I'm going to live on the street. If I surrender, who knows what will happen? And so there's a kind of a fear of surrender, a judgment of surrender, stigma around surrender. And I'm actually, I want to flip that on its head and provide a different framework and really get people to consider, if you surrender, what if you got more? Not less. What if you got more than you could imagine? More love, more joy, more beauty, more abundance, more than you can imagine right now with your mind. That surrender is the password to freedom. That surrender is the gift. Surrender is the key to all of the great ones. Jesus, Buddha, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Mandela, Elon Musk, Oprah, that's Bruce Lee, Muhammad Ali. At some point, they all had to surrender to something bigger than themselves. They all had to surrender to life. And so surrender is when you stop trying to force life to be what you think it should be. Surrender is when you stop trying to manipulate life with your little plans. We're often trying to force life based on our minds. We're often trying to force life based on what we think with our little old personalities, which are kind of conditioned, as we talked about earlier. So based on this conditioned thing, we think we know how our life should be. We think we know what's right. And now we're trying to control and impose our limited idea on life itself. How crazy is that? You know, and all we end up doing when we force life, push life, is we end up living a limited life. That doesn't mean yes, you can manifest, but you end up often living a much more limited life than if you truly surrender. So surrender is when you stop forcing life, manipulating life, controlling life, you know, and as human beings, we try to control everything. Control is the master addiction, right?
Yes,
we try to control ourselves, we try to control our thinking, we try to control our meditation, we try to control our body, we even try to control God through our prayers. God, do this, do that. We try to control our spouse, we try to control our children, we try to control our pet goldfish, we try to control the president. And the truth is, we don't have control over these things. And all it creates and brings us is more misery, more stress, more anxiety, more fear. It doesn't set us free. Surrender is the key to setting us free. And so surrender is letting go of the idea of who you think you should be, letting go of the idea of the life you think you should have, letting go of the idea of the life you envision, so that you can truly open to the life that is seeking to happen. This is true surrender. You know, it's living with openness, living with an open heart, being curious, giving 100% to feeling what your deepest truth is and living in alignment with that. And how the book came about was, this was not the book I thought I was going to write, actually.
All right.
I had an idea for another book, and I wrote a bunch of topics on a whiteboard and hundreds of ideas. And one day, the soul of this book came through, and it became incredibly clear to me that surrender was the topic. I resisted it for a moment, but then it was like, you know what? This is what it is. It's about surrender. I didn't think this was going to be the title. Then it was the same thing. It's the magic of surrender. Same thing with the book cover. I didn't think the publisher sent me the book cover. I said, no, that's not the book cover. And then I sat with it, and it became really clear that's the book cover. And so I felt like this book has a soul and destiny. And it became clear that this was the book seeking to be written versus the book I wanted to write. This was the book seeking to be written. And then I became I realized I was in service to the book versus the other way around. And I think when we bring ourselves into alignment with the flow that way, when we bring ourselves into alignment with the truth of our being that way, then we catch the flow. That's when magic happens. And from there, everything started happening. The original seed of the book was planted because in 2016-17, my mother was diagnosed with stomach cancer. And through that process, I got to go back and forth between Los Angeles and London to be with my mother in chemo sessions and just be with her, you know, for an entire year. I was flying back every 3 to 4 weeks to be with my mother, flying back, going there, flying back. It was incredibly hard. But what I realized was my mother didn't once complain. She's a very emotional being, but she didn't once complain. She didn't once cry. She didn't once feel like a victim. And I was curious why. And I realized it was because she was surrendered. When the doctor said to her, finally, you don't have long to live. It could be days, weeks, or months. We don't know. But it's the time is coming. It's a tough moment. You know, it's a difficult moment. I mean, the heart breaks. Here I am trying to do everything for my mother to keep her alive, everything for my mother to keep her safe.
Right.
Nothing is working. That's when I had to just surrender and realize I'm not in control, that she has her own destiny. And I looked at my mother in that moment and I said, is there anything, I said to her, are you afraid of death? And she says to me, no, I'm not afraid, because I know that I'm just a soul that is evolving, that even though my body dies, I don't die. I'll be here with you from the other side. And then I said, is there anything I can do for you to make your life easier? Can I buy you something, take you somewhere? What do you need? And she said, I don't need anything. I said, okay. She said, all I want is what God wants for my life. And it wasn't in a religious way. It was just the sense of she was at peace, you know? She wasn't attached to living. She wasn't attached to dying. She was just surrendered to the highest will, to the highest flow, to the highest expression of what life wanted to unfold for her soul. She was at peace. That's when I realized the power of surrender. She had surrendered. And I saw that her entire life she had lived that way. This was her key. This was her secret. I didn't even realize it till that moment. And I thought, wow, this is the power. And so I felt like that was a genesis of the inspiration for the book, you know, of how true greatness of anyone, those we know, those that we don't know, is really the degree to which we surrender. And so I'm just inviting everyone to make a shift from what do I want, right? Even when you set goals, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want? To feeling deeper and asking yourself a different question. And I would invite everyone to really try it. What is it that life wants to express through me? What is it that the universe wants to manifest through me? What is it that life wants to create through me? How is it that life wants to love through me? And to then be still and attune yourself to what the deepest expression and impulse of life is. Then you can align with that, plan around that, make action, you know, create a strategy, create a plan. Then you can align your actions and effort around what's true. But most of us right now, we're aligning our effort and actions around what's not true.
Right.
And so then when you take action, you're going in the right, authentic direction versus ladder up the wrong wall. And so that's how the book came about. And I really believe
I love it. Sorry, go ahead. I love it. I love what you're saying. It's
just
great.
really believe that when we surrender, we are open to life. Sometimes we get so attached to what we think is going to be, how we think it's going to turn out. We're like, oh, I already know what this is. And we don't. And so part of surrender is the willingness to live in the unknown, the willingness to embrace the unknown. That doesn't mean you don't commit. That means you stay open, you give 100% fully, but you also stay open to life, and you allow life to lead you. You allow life to guide you. You allow life to show you. And then you're open to infinite possibilities. You know, all possibilities are available. Then I have found what life is able to do through you is bigger than what you can do on your own.
I so agree with that. I mean, I've seen that in my own life, and I've seen that with other people as well. But I know for me, like, I'm new to practicing this, like, only in the last few years. But it's getting easier. But I find that, you know, my ego, my self-will, it's like I take that back, you know. So it's like I'll be doing good where I am like I've surrendered and and then all of a sudden I notice that I'm totally trying to take control again. And so I have to really stay aware and ask myself my intentions and my motives and things like that. So, I mean, what's your advice for somebody who really wants to surrender and, you know, wants life to speak through them and to, you know, the universe, higher power, whatever you want to call it, but to really be in tune with that so that they can share their gifts with the world? What are some steps that somebody can take when they're first starting out with this?
Yeah, I think it's just to sit and just, as I said, just shift the question from what do I want to what does life want to express to me? How, and just be still and practice listening. You know, life is always giving us clues, always. Many times we're not paying attention to the clues. So I would say also start paying attention to life and the clues, and just begin following those clues. You don't give up the idea that you need to know and you need to understand. And if you give that up and you follow the clues, you follow the guidance, you follow the impulse, it won't always make sense to your mind. So the need for things to make sense, something to give up just for a moment and just, okay, I'm guided here. I don't know why. I don't have the answer.
Trust it.
But this is my guidance. And just take a step. And sometimes the clues of life, they're not big clues. Sometimes the clues of life come to you in small whispers.
Yeah.
And those small nudgings and small whispers, we just have to start attuning to and listening. And then feeling the energy and going with the energy. That's the key. Ride that wave. This is where the wave's going. No, but the mind's like, but I should be doing this. But this is where the wave's going. You can go to the ocean and be like, well, I want to go here. Yeah, but the wave's going here. No, Jennifer, I want to go here. Try it, but there's no wave. It's fine. You can swim, but the wave's going here. So you go with the wave. This is where the wave is going. And that's the key.
I love that, Kute. Thank you so much. Well, I want to end this by asking you a couple of questions, a couple of final questions. But before I do that, quick questions, I'd like for you to share with everybody how they can learn more about your work, how they can get your book, and about how to access your podcast.
Sure. For those that are interested in the book, it's on all the way on, it's everywhere on Amazon and online. You can go to also www.themagicofsurrender.com. You can read all about the book there, watch the video. When you get the book on Amazon, please go there also and enter your name and receipt, and you'll receive a whole bunch of free gifts if you pre-order the book. So make sure you do that. We have videos, we have a free seminar, we have trainings, a bunch of meditation with a bunch of different things we're giving away. So that's there. My main website is Blackson.com. For those that might be interested in kind of going to the next level, I do an event twice a year in Bali called Boundless Bliss Bali. So you can go to www.boundlessblissbali.com. And everyone follow me on Instagram and Facebook. I'm available.
Great. Thanks so much, Kute. And I'll put that in the show notes as well. So I just have 2 more questions for you. So the last one is, what are your top 3 suggestions or advice that you would give somebody who feels like they're stuck where they are in life, just generally speaking, someone who's stuck and they feel like, you know, they're repeating the same mistakes over and over and over?
I'll make it quick just for time's sake. Number 1, start acknowledging and telling the truth to yourself. Start with the truth. Look at where you're lying to yourself. Start with the truth. Number 2, focus on gratitude and focus on what you're truly grateful for and what you have. because what you focus on just really expands. If you focus on what's beautiful only begins to grow. Number three, learn to be of service. Start truly being of service. Many times we suffer because we're so focused on ourselves. I'm stuck. I'm this, my life, my this is not working for me. Versus saying, okay, maybe my life isn't great, but how can I serve? When you serve, you take the focus off of yourself, you move your love outwards. And when you move your love outwards to serve, that's when you're open. And in the openness, you become available to not just giving, but to receiving. And so find ways where you are to be of service right now. Trust me, you will get unstuck quicker than you know. And you will not only start becoming valuable in people's lives and at your workplace, opportunities will start finding you, because successful people will start noticing your service consciousness, and trust me, they will want you around.
Wow, thanks so much, Kute. And then the final question is just anything else you want to share about your book? I don't know. I mean, I know we talked about it a little bit, but I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to share.
No, I think I just would love for everyone to get the book and spread the word and check out the book. Letting go leads to more. If you want magic, you got to surrender. So what do you need to let go of? What do you need to surrender? You can't go to the next level of your life being the old version of you. And I would just finally say, look, please, folks, life is short. Remember, you're going to die. I'm going to die. Jesus died, Buddha died, Mother Teresa died, Mandela died, you know, David Bowie died, Bob Marley died, Bruce Lee died. If all these great ones died, we're going to die. And that's a fact. So we can surrender now, or we can surrender tomorrow, or we can surrender when we're dead. But why wait till you're dead? I think, or next life, if you believe in such a thing. And so none of us know when the moment's going to come. And so if there's something you want to do, go do it. If there's someone you love, let them know. If there's someone you need to forgive, call them up today, right now. Call them up. Don't wait. Don't hold the grudge thinking you have another year, because you don't. Call them up and let them know, I forgive you, I release you, I bless you. Drop the grudge, you know. Whatever you need to do, do it, because when we die, when that moment comes, you can't go to your maker and say, God, I need can I get another 5 years? Because I wasted that time in that relationship that I knew wasn't right. Once the time is gone, it's gone. And so how would you need to live with no regrets, so when that moment comes, you can die in peace?
Love it. Thank you so much, Kute, for being here today. I really, really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you have a great day. And remember, you're a warrior in progress. You can do anything you set your mind to. If you enjoyed this episode of the Warrior in Progress podcast, then please share it with your friends, share it with everybody. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast as well so you can get notifications on when I release new episodes. Meanwhile, you can follow me on social media. On Facebook, my handle is fullycommitted13, and on Instagram, my handle is fully_committed13. You can find out more about my work at McKeeHealth.com. That's McKeeHealth.com. And make sure to download my free Tame Your Inner Critic guide at McKeeHealth.com, and you can learn how to stop beating yourself up, how to stop sabotaging yourself so that you can achieve your goals. Remember, you're a warrior in progress, and you can do anything you set your mind to.